another edition of Quick Trivia with Mike. I'm your host, Mike Brever. We're located right here in Lindsay Hall at East Castle Place, and we're coming to you on ECTV channel 955. This is, believe it or not, our 13th episode, so we're starting our third month here, so I hope you're having a good time with it. We are, and I am, so we hope you're enjoying it. And you know, no, this just isn't right. I'm gonna have to change. There. That just feels a lot more comfortable. You know, every week we come to you with 3 trivia questions, and I reveal the answers from last week, and I give you 3 new answers, or 3 new questions. But before I do, I just wanted to point out that 2 things in particular. Yesterday, I actually helped Willie do his low-impact aerobics show. And I can assure you, after doing exercises with Willie for 30 minutes, for those of you that do it, I don't know how you do it. I'm beginning to think I'm not ready yet for low-impact aerobics. I'm very stiff and sore today. And for those of you that do it, my hat's off to you, because it hurts the next day. Willie really gets you through a good regimen. The second thing is, I told you last week that it has been 3 months since I had a haircut. And now that barbershops and beauty salons and hairstylists are open again, told my wife I was going to go get a haircut. And she said, no, I really like your hair longer like that. So I asked you, the viewers, what do you think? I need to be able to influence my wife in this decision. I'd like shorter hair, but my wife thinks that it looks better this way. Well, unfortunately, everybody who spoke to me this week agreed with my wife. So I'm stuck with this for a little bit longer. Keep in mind, please, hot, humid weather is coming, and shorter hair would be wonderful. So have a little pity, and some of you come and tell me that I look better with shorter hair, so that I can go and tell my wife in all honesty, you know, Mary Beth, people just voted, and that's it. So we'll see. Have some pity on your host here, will you? And we'll see what happens. Now let's get right into this week's show. I started you off last week with a trivia question about toys. You know, we've done a couple in the past. We were talking about Lincoln Logs, and we talked about Candyland. We also talked a while ago about the very first television commercial that ever appeared on television. And as you remember from previous shows, that was Bulova watches. Well, last week I combined these 2 topics into one, and I asked you, what was the very first toy that appeared as a commercial on television? And we had a couple different answers, but believe it or not, many of you actually got the right answer. For those of you that are fans of Toy Story, one of the main characters in Toy Story is Mr. Potato Head. Mr. Potato Head was actually the very first toy commercial that ever appeared on television. Hasbro, of course, was the owner of it. They didn't invent it. They bought the rights for it in about 1952. It was actually invented by a gentleman who tried for almost a decade to try to turn it into a marketable toy, and he just didn't have the backing to make it work. Hasbro ends up buying it. They really turn it into a sensation, and specifically, I believe, because of Toy Story, Mr. Potato Head is one of the most popular toys, even to this day, which is 70 years after it first just blasted onto the scene. So, for those of you that played with it as a child, for those of you that gave it to your children or your grandchildren, that's it. Mr. Potato Head was the very first toy commercial to ever appear on television. We then asked you about a political question. We talked about the fact that the liberal movement in politics tends to be known as the left. The more conservative movement in politics tends to be known as the right. In American politics, that typically has come to be personified by the Democrats, and they are spoken of as being on the left, and Republicans are spoken of as being on the right. But we were a little bit curious about where this left and right came from. And we asked you, do you have any idea where the phrase left and right came from and how it came to be associated with liberals and conservatives? I must give credit where credit is due. This question came to me from my good friend Jim Fry. He's been a participant in Quick Trivia with Mike ever since the beginning, and he's contributed a couple of good questions, and I've really enjoyed them. So I want to give credit where credit is due. So Jim, my hat's off to you for this one. Many of you got this one right as well. It goes back to the time of the French Revolution. There was a National Assembly at the time of the French Revolution. That it was after the overthrow of the monarchy. There was a president of the National Assembly who sat in a chair in the middle of the room, and those to the left of him, or actually him, yes, those to the left of him, tended to be people that were in favor of the new order. Those who were to the right of him were what is known as monarchists. They still believed in the monarchy and having a throne control the politics in French at that time. And that's how it came to be known as the left was the liberal and the right was the conservative. Again, Jim came to us with that question, and actually everybody who participated this week got that one right. I think it was one of those that was relatively easy to look up on Google. But again, my hat's off to you for that. Then our third question went back a little bit to the history of NASA. We talked to you a while back about how NASA is located in Houston. It could have been in Cambridge, but Lee Harvey Oswald interceded. The assassination of John F. Kennedy moved NASA from, in essence, Massachusetts, where he was from, and moved it to Texas, where Lyndon Baines Johnson was from. And evermore, NASA has been located in Houston. There is a phrase that tends to be well known. Houston, we have separation of the module. Houston, we're about to land. Houston, we're going into a blackout zone. Well, one of the most famous phrases in NASA history is, Houston, we have a problem. And I ask you, who is it that coined that famous phrase? There actually are several variations of this, but it was a bit of a trick question. The very first person on Apollo 13 to say something similar was Jack Swigert. He said after the explosion on the capsule, he said, Houston, we've had a problem. He used the past tense. Houston, we've had a problem. It then, Houston continued to communicate with the capsule, trying to figure out what in fact was happening. James Lovell then actually clarified, and he said, Houston, we've had a problem. Again, past tense. So my question was, who said, Houston, we have a problem? The answer is, no astronaut ever said that. It was said in the past tense. Now, I was prepared to accept the we've had a problem if that's all people were able to come up with. However, two of our players correctly identified this as a trick question. And in the movie Apollo 13, Tom Hanks says, Houston, we have a problem. So the correct answer to who said, Houston, we have a problem, is Tom Hanks. And two of our players actually got that correct. It was Teresa Sundberg and Alex and Barbara Hill. As a result of that, those two entrants today, Teresa Sundberg and Alex and Barbara Hill, were co-winners of the 3 questions that we historically ask every week. We then go to a tiebreaker. And let me explain the tiebreaker so that you understand for next week's game as well. Listen to the bumper music when our program starts and when our program ends. If you can identify that bumper music, that is the tiebreaker. Every week, we tend to put up a new piece of classical music. And so this week, the tiebreaker is what was the bumper music that was on last week's show. The person who got it correct was Teresa Sundberg. The bumper music was the Magic Flute from the Queen of the Night area. So there you have it. We had 2 people who tied with all 3 answers correct. Mr. Potato Head, it came the National Assembly in the French Revolution, and Tom Hanks. But Teresa Sundberg is a repeat winner from the past because she correctly identified the bumper music. So congratulations to Teresa. Congratulations to the Hills for getting our 3 primary questions right. And thank you to all of you who participated this past week. I hope you had a good time with it. Now let's move on to this week's questions, which we will reveal on next week's show, along with the identity of the new bumper music. You know, I mentioned to you a while ago that in order to get these shows on channel 955, we first upload them through YouTube. And as a result of that, people are able to watch Quick Trivia with Mike who aren't necessarily East Castle Place residents. You know channel 955 is only visible within the community here at East Castle Place. But if someone knows how, they can go out and they can watch this show on YouTube. As a result of that, I think I've shared with you, I have 2 sisters and a brother who routinely watch this show. My sister in New Jersey told me last week that she enjoyed the fact that I sit in this chair now. You remember in past shows we were in front of stained glass windows, but she likes this. And she mentioned that when you look over my shoulder, you see a picture of a little girl. And she said it's almost like having an angel over your shoulder making sure that the show goes well. Well, for those of you that are familiar with that particular picture, right here in Lindsay Hall, you know that that is a picture of Nellie Hinton. Nellie Hinton was a young girl, the daughter of Francis Hinton, who actually tragically passed away at 8 years of age. She was born in 1852 and died in 1860. The Hintons actually have a long tradition with East Castle Place. You all know that we were started in 1884. Our original name was the Protestant Home, Milwaukee Protestant Home for the Aged. And we weren't always located on this campus. But when we came to this campus, we were the beneficiaries of the benevolence of many, many charitable-minded individuals, and the Hintons were just one of them. If you go to the stairwell on the north side of the historic building, you will see beautiful, beautiful stained glass windows. Those were actually created and installed by Tiffany. They are Tiffany stained glass windows. Those windows actually serve as the Francis Hinton Memorial. And as a result of that, that actually identifies the fact that the historic building, what is now known as the historic building, was the Hinton Addition. That actually opened in 1899. There was a previous building that opened on this campus. It occupied the footprint of what is now known as Water Tower. It was torn down to make room for Water Tower, but it opened in 1892. So East Castle Place started in 1884. We moved to this campus in 1892 on the footprint of what is now Water Tower. The oldest remaining building on this campus is the historic. You know that there are people who will tell you that there are ghost stories about East Castle Place, as it was then known as Milwaukee Protestant Home for the Aged. There are also people that will tell you that Nellie Hinton and her spirit lives on here at East Castle Place. Personally, I don't tend to think so, given the fact that we moved here in 1892 and the oldest building opened in 1897. And as I just explained to you, Nellie actually passed away in 1860. But I mean, if you see her head turn or her eyes moving, you know, please let me know. Although personally, I think if Nellie is still here, she's probably a benefactor in overseeing East Castle Place and keeping us all secure, maybe even during this pandemic right here. That leads us to my first trivia question today. We are all here at East Castle Place, except those of you who are exclusively watching it on YouTube. I explained to you that we started in 1884. Last year was our 135th anniversary, but we moved to this location in 1892. For those of you that are East Castle Place residents, what was our first address? This is kind of a tough question, so I'm going to give you a half point for each. I'll give you a half point if you can identify the street that we were on. So you'll get half the question right if you can at least get the street. If you get the street and the number address, I'll give you the full point. So you can either get 2.5 or 3 full questions answered correctly today. If you can identify the address of the very first home of Milwaukee Protestant Home for the Aged. So that's your first one. Put on your thinking caps. Look through some of the information you got when you moved here. Maybe some of that information will tell you what our initial address was if you can find a history of East Castle Place. Our second question, we're going to go off and delve on an entirely new topic. Many of you know the name Jack Ryan. Jack Ryan is the protagonist in all of the Tom Clancy novels. The Hunt for Red October, The Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger, some of my very, very favorite movies. This is one of those instances where I actually like the movies more than I enjoyed the books. Sometimes I enjoy the books more than the movies, but you know, I think that the movies have done a really good job of interpreting Tom Clancy's efforts in writing the novels. Alec Baldwin has played Jack Ryan in the past, Harrison Ford, Ben Affleck. John Krasinski is the newest Jack Ryan, and he's on Netflix Prime. It's actually a series. They film about 7 or 8 episodes of an ongoing story each season. They've just completed 2 seasons on Amazon Prime, and I'm looking forward to the 3rd season. Although I will tell you, in my opinion, John Krasinski is, I think, the weakest of the actors that have played Jack Ryan up until this point in time. An interesting thing, though, is that there actually was a real man named Jack Ryan. In the Tom Clancy novels, Jack Ryan is an analyst for the CIA. The real Jack Ryan was nothing of the sort. The real Jack Ryan was an alumnus of Yale. He became an aerospace engineer. He actually helped design the government's Hawk and Sparrow 3 missile systems. However, Jack Ryan is most famous for something else that he did. He invented something whose home is in Willows, Wisconsin. Jack Ryan invented something in 1959 whose home is in Willows, Wisconsin. What did the real Jack Ryan invent? So that's the question for you. It has nothing to do with the Tom Clancy novels. It's a coincidence in names. But what did Jack Ryan invent? My third question goes off into a completely new arena. We really have not delved into sports yet in Quick Trivia with Mike, but I thought it might be fun. I saw an article in the newspaper yesterday or the day before that the Wisconsin Badger football team is going to be reporting to campus probably within about 2 weeks. And they don't know how they're going to do it yet safely, but they are looking forward to beginning practice. They may end up splitting the team into thirds, and a third of them will practice in the morning, and then the afternoon, and then the evening. They're not sure how they're going to do it yet, but they are very certain that in some way, shape, or form, college football will return to the landscape this fall. You know, I'm a big fan of college football. It actually probably is the type of football that I enjoy the most, more so than the NFL. And I'm anticipating or anxiously looking forward to the new season, the 2020 college football season, especially because the Badgers are anticipated to have a very good year. CBS in a preseason poll has them ranked number 11. Athlon Sports has them at number 12. Sporting News has them at number 16. Believe it or not, ESPN in their preseason poll has them at number 4 and considers them an outlier at a chance to get into the college football playoff this year. That would be really, really exciting for me. I'd love to see that. I've been a fan of the Badgers forever. However, you know that college football isn't just Big Ten. In fact, in college football, the SEC has tended to dominate very much over the last 10, 15 years, especially since the beginning of the college football playoffs. Teams like Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Florida, they have dominated the national championship scene, except for a couple of times when Ohio State broke through and ended up winning the championship. So the SEC has been right there. One of the things about the SEC, however, is, of course, the heat. They're playing in all southern states. They are, in fact, the Southeast Conference. During July, August, practices, etc., the heat and humidity can become overpowering, just overpowering. And that tends to detract from the performance of the players, especially during the preseason practices. Back in 1965, Florida decided that they were going to try to come up with something that would address this problem. And they actually reached out to the University of Florida College of Medicine. Two gentlemen by the name of Robert Cade and Dana Shires were approached by the football coach at Florida, Ray Graves. And he told them, I need you to invent something that will replace body fluids during physical exertion. What can you do? Well, lo and behold, the scientists did in fact come up with this. However, in fairness, there are many scientists who doubt the effectiveness of it. Probably as many as 30% of athletes would respond to an effort, and in fact, a direct quote out of a scientific study is that 30% of athletes would experience pain relief if you said to them that you had given them Demerol. In other words, there are a lot of scientists that believe that this invention from the College of Medicine at the University of Florida is nothing more than a placebo. However, I can tell you that Ray Graves thought it was extremely successful, and it is used to this day. What is it that was invented to relieve the effects of dehydration for the University of Florida that was invented back in 1965? So there you have it. Those are our 3 questions for the day. We delved into a little bit of East Castle Place history. We went off into a little bit of sports history, and then we went into a little bit of Wisconsin history as well. So to get those answers into me, get them in by noon on Monday. You can get them to me by email, mbereaver@eastcastleplace.com, or you can call me at 963-8425. I know I went through those very, very fast. you can call the front desk and ask Mona or Lila or Famata for my information, and they'll give it to you. You can get me by email or by phone. Or you can put it in my mailbox. Write it down on a sheet of paper and get it to me in my mailbox behind the concierge desk. Do it by noon on Monday, and you could be in. As always, we have a bottle of wine for our winner. The winner this past week is going to get this wonderful bottle of white Zinfandel that was donated by a past winner of ours, Kelvin Schrader. Kelvin is a wonderful past champion, and he's been very generous with that. So we're going to be taking that bottle over to Teresa Sundberg. Next week's winner is also going to be getting a bottle of wine. But that's it for now. For all of us here at ECTV, the president of ECT, Tyler Gudex, our general manager, Laura Wengler, Scott McFerrin, our producer, Cooper Ledvina, and again, I'm especially grateful to Scott because he's not only the producer at ECTV, he is my producer here at Quick Trivia with Mike, and he's my cameraman as well. If you think that this show looks good, it is all due to Scott, and I'm extremely grateful. So for all of us here at ECTV and for the team here at Quick Trivia with Mike, I ask you all to stay safe, I ask you to be smart, and I ask you to be patient. Very, very quickly, we will all be able to enjoy that wonderful East Castle Place hospitality once again. That's all for now. I'm Mike Brever. I'll see you next week.